Hey guys, sorry this video took a little while. We've had some programming issues with the programs that we use for video editing and audio and stuff. Major problems. I've had to actually essentially factory reset my computer and reinstall everything, start from scratch. So this video took a little bit longer than anticipated, but it will be part of a series. So this will be the first video out of several videos that I'll be making. If you guys have any ideas or anything like that, I'm going to be actually making a new video shortly, so definitely shoot me some comments or something like that, and that'd be great. But that being said, let's get started. So if you're like me, you have a box full of scrap that you had either laying around or maybe you were gifted it. My friend Spencer did give me some of these bits here. And other bits I found at like Family Dollar or Dollar Tree. But yeah, we're gonna use that. Found this cool little Rubik's Cube made of pipes that I just tore apart and then took out the little pipe bits. We're gonna glue those together and make a pipe. I also grabbed a can that we used for our dinner the other night. My wife made some food. Made sure I cleaned it out and there was no excess like food residue or anything. Clean it out well. Then grab some foam board, whatever style you want. And make sure it has a paper backing though, because we are going to be using some super glue later. Kind of played around to see where I'd want the pipe and then glued that together separately. Once I figured out more or less how I'd want the terrain piece to be, like size wise, grab my super glue and just put some glue around the edge of the can. Make sure it's a really like thin piece, and like I said, make sure the paper backing is still on the foam board, because if it's not, this super glue is just gonna melt through. So even though it's a thin bit of super glue, we're gonna reinforce it later with the terrain that we're gonna use. Now, once that's done and that's nice and glued, we're gonna glue on the pipe. Make sure you hold it tight and make sure the glue sticks before you go on to the next step. So just dig around for some bits. Found this cool little warhead thing, missile. I'm not sure what it's called, but found it at Family Dollar. Dug through some more stuff. I ended up finding this like gas tank thingy. I think this was at Dollar Tree. Got like 2 of them. Ended up not using them, but first, kind of figured out more or less where I'd want the missile to be. I figured if it was an orc, where would they put it? Probably like right next to it. Or maybe as a barricade? I don't know. So they had some gaps and some holes there. So what I ended up doing is grabbing some green stuff and just filling in the holes. This way it didn't look too much like a toy. Once that was done, put on some super glue on it and just put it onto the side. Make sure you push it down tight enough so the glue sticks on. My goal is to do like a square, not a square, I guess, a rectangle base. So I kind of measured that out. Made sure it had enough room to fit some models, but not big models. If you play 40K, you know the frustration of people, you know, saying something's in cover when it's not in cover and all that other stuff. 9th edition fixed it a little bit, but yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So this is just some chipboard that I cut out to kind of fit more or less the sides of the top, just so it doesn't look too much like a can. I had some excess green stuff, so I figured I'd fill in the gaps with that. Once that was done, I took my X-Acto knife and chipped away at the edges of the foam board, just to kind of give it more of a beveled edge, and so it kind of like goes into the table of whatever you're using for this terrain. I also grabbed some corrugated cardboard bits that I had in that box that were left over from another project and just super glued that towards the top. My idea is it's probably like an old refinery that orcs took over somehow and they just grab whatever to patch things up. Also grabbed this random bit that was on the Rubik's Cube thing and I just kind of glued it onto the side. Kind of give it a little bit more dimension. And I figured, you know, it'd be cool just doing like a pipe, like an oil pipe that's leaking. So obviously orcs are not going to keep up with this unless it's developing weapons or anything. They don't care. They just leave it to rot and like rust. So did that, made sure that was glued on as soon as I found the good spot for it. Now once all that's glued, I went ahead and grabbed some of the Mod Podge that we're going to use to kind of seal everything in. So grab that. Now we're using Mod Podge because, well, number one, we have cardboard there. We're going to want to throw some washes on there later, so we need something to seal it, so this way it doesn't just get all gross and like wet cardboard. Yeah. So we're going to go over all the cardboard parts with that. Next, I finally got my hands on some Scraptown, which has been out of stock through Amazon for a while, but I finally found a bag and I wanted to try it out. It's very similar to the other paper mache thing that I used for the forest video, which will be up on the top left or top right if you want to see that. But just mixed it to the specifications that were on the bag and just used my finger. I think I ended up using like a popsicle stick or something to smooth it out, but just got my hands messy, got it all over the base. All right, once that was done, I made a little orc rock thing that I might use for the next project I'm doing. I don't know, I had some leftover Scraptown, so what the hell. Now I used this rust primer and this Corex white primer. Rust primer I got at Walmart. The other thing I got from my local hobby store. This is how it turned out. It gave a really cool effect. If you guys can find the rust spray, definitely use it. But once that was done, I used some Mod Podge to seal it up. Grab some yellow paint, which in retrospective, probably should have used a different color since the can was already yellow, but whatever. I just kind of dabbed that all around. Made sure we covered it. Yellow's really fickle, so I did like 2 or 3 coats. Then once that was done, I grabbed some silver paint and just kind of brushed over all the metal parts. Next, I grabbed some Riser Rust, or Rizza Rust, I don't know how it's pronounced, and just dry brushed some of that onto the metal. Made sure the metal parts were dry first before I did this. I went really heavy-handed because we're going to put a bunch of stuff over it, which will bring down the orange and give it a better rust effect. Grab some of this German brown, which I got from a rust kit, or like a multi-pack of paints. I watered it down a little bit and just started putting it over some other metal parts, along with the pipes and the rocket. Once that was done, I grabbed some of this smoke effect, which I love. I always use it on all my orc stuff now that I found out what it does. Gives it like a grimy look, but I made sure I watered that down as well with a little bit of water because I don't want it to cover over the other paint that we put on there too much. We just want to make it look dirty, like it's old and abandoned. Cool. Now that that's done, we're going to use some Mephiston Red to the top of the warp head thing, which I know it was already red, but we have to paint over it so it doesn't look plasticky. And also, we could kind of wear away on the paint a little bit, so like the metal kind of shows, so it looks more realistic. Once that's done, got some Agrax Earthshade, which is the go-to for any orc terrain. And just kind of put that over all the other stuff there to grime it up some more. Now that that's done, we're going to grab some silver and we're going to dry brush this onto the metal parts to give it like a, I guess like a dragged appearance, like a scratched metal. But we're going to make sure we dry brush over all the metal parts. Makes it pop a little bit more. I also put it on the edges of the top of the refinery. And just kind of go over any place that looks good. Make sure it's really, really dry. We don't want it to go too much over the grime and stuff that we just built up. Next, this very cool Vallejo environmental rust that I bought off of Amazon, I think. Saw it in a different video and it's super cool. I haven't used much of it, just trying to like reserve it and hoard it. But go over some metal bits if you have it. If you don't have this, completely fine. But I think it adds a good ruts texture and like feel and like a grime to the pieces that I make. So yeah. Next, we're gonna start with the ground. So I use this Beastly Brown that we have on here. I think I got this from my first actual paint kit. So I'm still using it to this day. So that thing lasted a while. Thank you, Vallejo. I'm gonna go over all the ground. Be careful with not hitting the stuff that we've already painted. But if you do hit it, no biggie, just go over it again. Or just throw some like grime on there, some rust or some diluted brown. I have these posters that I found online that I printed out and just cut them like to size. So I figured I'd like put one on the side over here, just grab some watered down glue and just plopped it on there. And then I also went over it with some more glue to seal it. And then I think I threw some Agrax Earthshade over it once it dried, just to make it blend in more with the actual piece. If you can, what I did was kind of wrinkle it a little bit so it doesn't look too flat and perfect, because obviously it's been there for a while. I also took my X-Acto knife and kind of dug into it. Now we're going to dry brush the ground with this khaki. Make sure everything's really dry before you do this. And just hit everything on the ground. Now it's time for some weird toxic paint, I guess. I use this for my Nurgle tree thing, which will be at the top right if you want to see that. Super useful, made a whole bunch of it at like once, and it'll act like a weird toxic thing that's spewing out of the refinery. I also made sure to add some drips to like the side of it, because you would think with it being so abandoned, more than likely some is spewing through and whatever gunked up the system is kind of not being maintained well, so just drip it all over the place near the pipes. Now we're going to cover it with some flock, which this flock I got from my local game store. It came in like a pack of 5 flocks or something. But super useful. Just grab some watered down glue, PVA glue, Elmer's glue, whatever you want to use, but make sure it's watered down. We're going to put it in random spots and blobs, because you would think this is not it's not a meadow. It's not like a beautiful place. If grass is growing, it's definitely growing in patches. Now we're going to go ahead and just sprinkle on the flock. Make sure you go fairly quickly because glue tends to dry up. So we want to make sure we hit everything as quick as possible. Make sure it actually stays on the terrain. Once it's dry, you can also hit it with some watered down PVA if you're concerned on whether or not the flock will stay on. That helps keep it down. And here's the finished piece. I really like how the rust features came out and like the metallic features on the little rocket doomsday warhead thing. And also you could fit a good size of troops up on the top. I think that base for my DACA jet is a little bigger than you normally use it on, but I couldn't find its actual base. But yeah, so probably fit like 5, 8 grots up there, maybe some guardsmen or some cultists if you run chaos. But super cool looking terrain piece. I can't wait to finish everything else, so to see the finished map, I guess. If you guys have any ideas, definitely leave a comment or leave a like if you like this video. I'm going to be filming something today, so if you guys send any comments on this day, I can definitely try to work them into the next piece. But thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.